Hello world, this is Michelle Mead with Nostalgic Ceramics Studio, and today we're talking test tiles. As boring as test tiles may seem, they are so important in the pottery studio. Why, you ask? Why are test tiles so important, Michelle? I'll tell you why. Have you ever worked so diligently and so hard on that masterpiece, only to fire it in your glaze fire and have it come out just exactly how you did not want it to be? Has that ever happened to you? Hello, it's happened to me multiple times. Too many times to count. I don't even want to admit how many times. And so that's why test tiles in the pottery studio are so important. In our studio here at Nostalgic Ceramics, we are working on getting a test tile made for every single glaze that we have and carry in the studio. And because we just really want people to be able to come in, pick out a test tile, and know exactly what that glaze is going to do for them when they fire in our kiln here in studio. So I'm going to take you along and show you how we here at Nostalgic Ceramics make our test tiles. Let's go. All right, let's start with some materials and tools that we're going to need. So always the handy dandy fettling knife. This particular one is Dolan Tools. It's served me well. I've had it for a long time. It's been a good tool. This I picked up at my local hardware store. It was real cheap. I could get a ton of them. I think they were like 99 cents a piece. And then I cut them down to whatever size I need. I use these constantly in the studio. They're a great tool. They're inexpensive to get. They're easy to come by. This here is another great tool to have in the studio. This is not as inexpensive as a tool. This is actually a quilting square, and I have several of them. And yes, I do quilt, but somehow the quilting squares have managed to make their way into the pottery studio, and that's where they've stayed because they are such a great tool to have in the studio. So great. These they're, you got to get them at craft stores. You can get them at fabric shops, things like that. They are a little bit more expensive. And there are other ways to do this. You don't have to have a square. I just really like it because it keeps everything pretty consistent in measurement. So if you're really wanting to get things real square and you're really wanting to get a slab that's like, the same exact size as the next slab and the next slab and the next slab, you're going to want to get yourself one of these. So wear boards, as usual. These wear boards are a must for making any sort of tile, whether that be just a flat test tile or whether you're making tiles for a backsplash in your bathroom or your kitchen. I don't know. You have to have wear boards. Why, you ask? Well, because we're going to layer the tiles in between each wear board, put more, get another wear board, put it on top, tiles, another wear board, put it on top. You get the idea. That's going to help keep your tiles flat, and that's going to help prevent warping while they dry. So you're going to need wear boards. Here I just have a little punch tool to punch out my hole for my test tiles. You could just use a holer if you want, but I find this to be real quick. I just stamp, 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 stamp. It makes time go, it makes it go quicker. As usual, my trusty rib. This is Mud Tools. It's the yellow rib. I love this rib. So, I mean, Mud Tools aren't necessarily the cheapest tools in the world, but this is one of those ones that I'll splurge every time. This is a good tool. A sponge and a bucket of water. So that's what we'll be needing. Obviously, you're going to need a slab of whatever clay that you're going to be testing. Our studio currently has 2 clays that we know for certain are staples in the studio and 3 more that we're going to be testing. So that's why we're on a test tile kick right now, because we want to introduce some more clay bodies into the Nostalgic Ceramics studio. So You're gonna need a slab of whatever clay body you're testing. If you're testing multiple clay bodies, you're gonna want multiple slabs. I recommend you do one slab at a time because your red clay and your white clay don't mix well. Or, you know, technically they do mix well, but do you really want red on your white test tiles? Probably not. So make sure you clean up in between is the point. All right, I'm gonna go roll that slab and I'll be right back. Okay, we're back. We've got a slab. So this is a porcelain clay body. It's been sitting in the bag for a while, so all of these specks that you see on it are actually, they're not clay. It's actually a little bit of mold, which is perfectly fine. There's no harm to mold in your clay. As a matter of fact, in different cultures of the world, the more moldy your clay is, the better. People will actually age their clay like they do wine, and the moldier it is, the more plastic it is, the better it is. So obviously clay is an organic material, and you know, it grows mold. So that's what this is. This is a porcelain clay body. It's a mid-range porcelain. I haven't worked with it a lot. I've toyed around with it a little bit, enough to know that the glazes in the studio work well with it. Porcelain is kind of it's a learned like. That's how I'm gonna put it. You have to learn to like it. It's beautiful in its own right. I mean, maybe one of the most beautiful clay bodies you can get. And at the same time, it's also the most temperamental. Isn't that just the way of it? So, I haven't used it too much. I haven't used porcelain too much, just enough to know that this clay body is going to be a staple in our studio. It's very pretty. If you get it thin enough, it will be transparent. Yeah, so a bunch of test tiles on that. Obviously, porcelain holds glaze better than any other clay body because it's so pure white that the glazes just pop on it. Glazes are just beautiful on porcelain. Like I said, porcelain has its benefits. It's also the most difficult to work with. So to start, we are going to get our square, and basically I just start squaring everything off with my fettling knife. Get rid of the excess, pull it to the excess, not excess, excess, and pull it off to the side. We're just going to continue to line up and go down. Obviously, you know, this is a square and it's a great tool in the studio, but you know, these test tiles, they don't have to be as square as a quilt. You know, I do the best that I can, but obviously if this was a quilt, it wouldn't be perfect. So the square is a very useful tool I've found in the studio. I'm gonna go here. So with my tiles, my idea is to have a big giant board of test tiles, because I kind of want it to be not only do I want the test tiles, obviously, but I kind of want it to be an artistic form. So an artistic form, I'm sorry. I can't think and work at the same time. I don't know how many times I've explained this to people. I have a terrible time trying to focus on what it is I'm doing and talk at the same time. But we're gonna keep practicing because that's where I wanna be. So let's see, I'm actually gonna move this down. I don't wanna move the camera, but I need a little bit more space, which is gonna knock all of this off of square again. But oh well, like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, and my test tiles are 4 inches long. And again, this only really matters, I mean, you could just cut this up. This only really matters mainly because I'm trying to make the test tiles into a piece of artwork. And I also have a project in mind for tiles, like real tiles, like clay tiles, porcelain tiles, that I've never made tiles before other than these test tiles. And so I feel like this is a good practice run for that as well. And so as I'm doing this, I'm not only creating an art piece, but I'm also teaching myself a little bit about tiles as I go and what things that I can do to help the tile process go as smoothly as possible. Practice, 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 right? And we're not gonna get 4, I mean, it's close, but not quite 4 inches out of this one. So what I'll end up doing is cutting it to the width that I want and doing 4 inches this way. So I'm just gonna move that off to the side. And this is where my hardware store ruler comes in. I'm just doing this number with it. It makes it real easy for me to remember what size my test tiles are. They're 4 inches by a hardware ruler. And you can see how off square that actually ended up being right here at the end. It's because I lifted the slab up and moved it. If you hadn't lifted the slab up and moved it, it would still be on. So, all right, this is where the punch comes in. And let's see, I had a needle tool. Yeah, right here. I got a needle tool. And the only thing I'm really using this for is to punch the clay out of the middle there if it sticks. You know, sometimes it sticks, sometimes, see, that time it's stuck. So we're just gonna push that out. Push that out and keep going. And this is the quick and easy way I've found. I mean, I find this to be easier than doing the holer after it's leather hard later on. It just goes quicker. It's like an assembly line, right? Like you're already here, you're already standing here, you're already doing the cutting, you may as well do the punching all at the same time. Obviously for tiles that you would use for backsplash, you know, you'd be done at this point until the tile was leather hard. Then you could bevel it if that was something you wanted to do. So I know I've mentioned this in another video, but the more you move the clay, the more likely it will be to warp. So on tiles, you know, people who make tiles professionally, they don't move the slab at all. They've figured out ways to roll the slab, compress it, cut out their tile, and the tile never leaves the board. They never move it. And that's how they are preventing the warping. Obviously in a small, you know, hand-build, non-production studio, that isn't how things work. Not to mention the fact that you want handmade to look handmade anyway. Like, you want it to be obvious your tiles were handmade, right? So perfection is not the goal, is my point. Perfection's not the goal. The goal is charm. Okay, so what happens next on this theme of trying to keep these as flat as possible? Can you see the wear boards? Okay, you can kind of see them in the corner here. We're going to lift up, try to straighten out if it bent, and kind of stamp it down. Lift up, straighten out if it bent, kind of stamp it down. So that's what we're doing. All right, and I'll scoot this over so you can see where we're at. Okay, so then you're gonna put this board on top, smack it down a little, and then you do it again, and you just keep stacking wear boards like this. Okay, and then you just keep going. So now, obviously, there's multiple ways to make test tiles. You don't have to make them like I am. Some people make them with a little foot to catch runny glaze if they're testing glazes that are real runny. Some people throw them on the wheel with a foot. I mean, if you go online and you Google test tiles, the possibilities are probably endless. Like I said, personally, for my big art pieces, I throw mugs on the wheel, and that is my test tile. So test tiles come in all different shapes and sizes and clay bodies, and the reason that I'm making these this way is I know that the glazes that I carry in the studio currently are stable. I know that they're not going to drip unless I want them to, and I intentionally make them drip, for one. For two, I wanted it to be an art piece, and I wanted it to be on a board that's going to lay flat. Here, I'll kind of show you. I'm going to make a board like this. It's going to be white, and the test tiles are going to be a little bit more uniform. Like, you can see that these are all warped, and I didn't take nearly as much care with them. I just cut them whatever size I wanted to. I just went through and just sliced them. I ripped them up. I didn't stack them, and you can see how they're warped. And look at this one, it's warped badly. So I want to do this again, but this time I want it to be an art piece, and I want these to lay a little nicer, a little flatter. So that's why I'm taking the precautions I am with these tiles. And three, like I said, I want to do a tile project, and so I want to practice getting these tiles as flat as I possibly can. Okay, so there's that. And then on a final note, before I show you what the next step on these tiles is, that I want to make a shrinkage ruler. And I'll show you a couple that I've made already that are just bone dry. So both of these rulers are bone dry. They are both in different clay bodies. This is a white stoneware. The porcelain will be whiter than even this once it's dry. This is a red stoneware. They're both a 5/6 mid-range cone 5/6 clay body. And I just want to show you, and they're both bone dry. They have not been fired. But I just wanted to show you, this one is 8 inches and this one's 9 inches. That's why one's longer. But I wanted to show you how much the difference in the shrinkage is already. So if I line the 7-inch mark up with a 1-inch mark on this one, if we lined it up, you can see that the red stoneware has already shrunk dramatically more than the white stoneware. Okay, why does that even matter? Why does that matter? Why does shrinkage matter? Well, typically it doesn't. Until you want to make a lid fit a jar. Or until you want to make a piece X amount, a certain size, and you keep firing it and it keeps coming out smaller than the size you need it to be. That's because of shrinkage. Clay loses a percentage, every clay body loses a percentage in the firing process on size. So that's what shrinkage is. And that's why we're gonna go ahead and make a shrinkage ruler for this porcelain clay body as well. We will make one for every clay body. And then I'll show you another tool you can get if you don't have a shrinkage ruler. You can purchase one. And I think that this is Diamond Core Tools has these. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that that's their logo. This says www.buycip or ciproducts.com. Here. I don't know. I'm sure if you Google shrinkage ruler, you can find one. Anyway, they're not cheap, and so once you get one, you got to kind of keep it nice. So porcelain typically has a 14% shrinkage. Most of the stonewares I've had have between a 12 and a 10. Actually, not even. Most of the stonewares I've had are like 11 to 10% shrinkage. I would imagine that clays with a small expansion and a ton of grog, like a sculptural clay, probably have a lower shrinkage. So anyway, that's how that works. I still think it's a good idea to create a ruler that's exact, a shrinkage ruler that's your exact clay body. Just because, you know, this is not a precise, exact measurement. This is just an educated guess. Okay, so for our shrinkage ruler, let's go ahead and make this one 9 inches. And again, I'm just using my handy dandy hardware store ruler here. I know that there's a name for these, there's a name for these. And every once in a while I think, oh yeah, it's on the tip of my tongue, and then it's not. So, you know. Okay. All right, so this is gonna sound a little funny. As much as I like these, I don't trust the measurements on them. I guess not as much as I trust the Bank of Fort Morgan's ruler. So there's that. I don't use the hardware store's rulers to make my shrink rulers. I get another one. And we decided we're gonna do 9 inches. So we're gonna cut it off here. And we're starting at 1, so we're gonna cut it off here. I've had an experience before where I used one of these and the measurements were way off, like way off. You can turn that into a test tile. All right, so then I'm gonna go ahead and take this and I'm gonna line that up. We've got 9 inches there exactly. And so I'm just gonna go through and put a mark at each inch interval. 1 inch intervals. I'm starting there. You wanna get this as precise as possible. All right, and then I'm gonna go in and do the 1/2 inch. Okay. And these 1 inch, I'm gonna move the ruler down and I'm gonna make these 1 inch intervals a little bit longer than the others because I do appreciate that. It makes it easier to read the 1 inch marks. Okay, and then I'm gonna make it shorter and I'm gonna mark those 1/4 inch. Okay, and there you have your marks. I'm gonna write on there the clay body so that I know. I'm gonna mark the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh, see? I'm like, wait a minute. Duh. I'm like, I'm pretty sure I only made this a 9 inch ruler. Why is it 10 inches? It's not. Okay. The 9 inch is at the end of there. Okay, so there's our shrinkage ruler. And then as soon as this is dry, I'll go through and clean that up. Just like I did these. So that goes on a wear board. Try not to bend it. Okay. All right, so that's making the tiles. Now we're gonna come back and we're gonna clean them up. Okay, so this is our white stoneware clay body. This is the color it is when it's leather hard, and this is the color of it once it is bone dry. So as you can see here, and I'll get a piece of the Coda porcelain here so you can see the color difference between the leather hard stoneware and the porcelain. So this stoneware fires pretty white, extremely white. The porcelain, I don't have an example for you, but the porcelain is gonna fire even whiter, lighter than this. Anyway, the point that I'm making is that that's how I can tell the difference between the porcelain and the stoneware. You can tell. You'll learn your clay bodies. You'll know what is what. All right, so back to the fettling knife, the needle tool. This right here is the other tool that I like to use for cleaning these up. So as you can see, these are definitely leather hard. They're not flopping around. What I like to do is just kind of, this is what I've been doing to just kind of make sure that they're compressed flat. Then I've been taking my fettling knife and just using the table as a guide, going through and just cleaning off those sharp edges. Now again, this is not necessary for test tiles. You could just wipe them down and take off that sharp edge with a sponge. I'm doing this because again, I want it to be an art piece, and I'm practicing for making real tiles. So if you want to make real tiles, this is one way to do it. If you want them to look handmade and you don't want them to necessarily be, you know, perfect, but you need them to be flat, this is a technique that you could use to accomplish that. So if you're just making test tiles and you're not too concerned about how they look, other than, you know, your main focus is just what the glaze is going to do on them, this really isn't necessary. Like I said, you could just sponge it off. But this is what I'm doing. So, and then I like this little tool I've been using to just clean up this edge a little bit where the tile will hang. Okay, and then that one's done and ready to fire. And so I just keep doing that over and over and over again. All right, so I'm gonna keep going and doing that, and then once I've got all of these done, you know, I put the wear board back on top. And I'm gonna let them dry out the rest of, well, not quite the rest of the way, almost the rest of the way on the wear board. You know, after it's like super leather hard, almost bone dry, but not quite, I'll take them off the wear boards and let them dry out the rest of the way. And I'll show you some finished ones that have not been bisque fired yet. They're just bone dry. They came out looking like this, which is, you know, there's a ever so slight warping. I don't even know if you can see that. I mean, this would lay flat on a wall just fine, as long as it fires as flat as it dried. So they're pretty uniform in size and shape. And so I'm really happy with how those turned out. And so I'm just gonna keep going, and I'm gonna keep making them, and hopefully that will get me a really cool test tile art piece for the studio, and also get me the practice I need for making real tiles. All right, so real quick before I close out this video, I'm gonna show you what I do with these. All right, so what I have here from Amaco is their black underglaze pencil. So when this is fired, it doesn't come off. It's like a pencil, but it's actually like a glaze. It doesn't come off. And they've put it in a pencil form so it's easy to write with. And so what I have done is, let's just pick one up. We've got a test tile here, and if you look on the back, it says number 22. It says the glaze, how many coats, and it went on first. And then it's got the glaze, how many coats, and then okay, this one actually is a little bit confusing, like which one went on top. I think it was the night moth was on top and the robin's egg was on bottom. Anyway, this is how the tile looks, but it's number 22. So then here in my notes book, we're gonna find glaze number 22. And here I've written down 22, and I wrote down exactly what the glaze was. So it's night moth, so it's robin's egg times two on the first coat, and then it's night moth 2 coats over the top of that. It's on a textured tile with Iceman clay body, fired to cone 6, on Iceman Stoneware. So the point is that you can write on the back the number of the tile. Here, this one is number 21. It's very similar, but it's a completely different glaze. It's an Aurora green. So you can write on the back of the tile with your underglaze pen at least a number. I mean, you can write what you did if you want, what you fired to, what the clay body is, but you could just write number 29 and leave it at that, and then come over to your notes and write in your notes exactly what you did. That way people can come up, they can pick up a tile, flip it over, they say, hey, this is tile number 28, how did you achieve that? And you can go to your notes and tell them exactly how you achieved it. Or if you're not in a studio setting, you can just know that for yourself. All right, that's all I have for you on test tiles. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you learned a lot of things. I hope it wasn't as boring as you thought it would be. And I'm sorry that it's a long video about test tiles. I hope we catch you in the next video. Bye.